Why did you feel so adamantly that NASCAR had to win, at least at that point in the trial during the first week?
Because NASCAR's not in a bad place. Okay, inside the
You sure about that?
walls, inside the walls.
All right, well, here's a man who needs no introduction. He's been on the show several times here, and if you follow this channel, you know who he is. If you follow my Twitter feed, you probably know who he is with our conversations that have gone back and forth over the last couple of months here over the playoff system and the ongoing trial between 2311 Front Row Motorsports and NASCAR. Matthew Owens back on the Ben Schneider show. And Matthew, I just want to give you the floor right away before I even ask a single question related to the trial. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into playoffs, I'm sure, and overtime. I know where you stand on that one, especially, and maybe a few more things later on tonight. But the first thing I want to do is just give you the floor to explain your tweet that got a lot of responses from a lot of people. What caused your reaction to the news that the settlement had been reached to be Denny choked again? What else is new?
Hi, everybody. How are you? Great introduction. Um, I don't. Hmm. Let's see how to word this. Okay, so this all happened Thursday, yes?
Believe so.
This would have been late Thursday morning, which would have been what, like day 8, I believe, of the trial
Day
or
nine.
9,
Yep.
whatever. It'd been over a week. And I think a lot of people, well, let's back up. We've been hoping for about 12 months to this point to get to a settlement or get to an end to all of this, to the point of where I was starting to wonder, and I think a lot of people were starting to worry that there would never be a settlement. But okay, here's the tweet from Bob and all of the journalists, and we could have a settlement. Okay, great. And then there is a settlement. Great. I just decided to go on Twitter and just have fun. That's what I go to Twitter to do, is to have fun and send out a tweet that, no one agreed with. Um, let's be honest here. We've talked about it. I never really go on Twitter, very rarely go on Twitter to be 100% serious, especially when we're in the off season and especially when it feels like the last 5 or 6 months of NASCAR Twitter has just been extremely angry. Everybody's been angry about it. So yeah, just, a snarky tweet. That's all. It wasn't received too well, but it was really a simple story behind it.
Well, on that. So, what is that story then? Because I mean, I can send out a tweet that is an unpopular opinion, but I told you this to be fair in our conversations. I think your replies were full of this as well. The teams got most of what they want. I mean, Denny did say there were a couple of concessions on both sides, but they came in wanting permanent charters. They got those. They got their charters back. They had been allowed to race with them the first part of the year, and then they did. I mean, Bubba Wallace technically won the Brickyard 400 in an open car because they didn't have their charters
Yeah.
the second part of the year. They got those back. They probably doubled in value, we're hearing, with the fact that they're permanent now. Jim France said that would never happen. They got that. How do you look at the results of this trial and come away still willing to send off a tweet like that, even if you're not being 100% serious, as you were saying there?
Right. Well, I will say, um, as someone that does not speak legalese and have
Or do
no
I, to be clear?
have no intent of getting into any kind of law career, um, it did feel, I think everyone can agree, it did feel like through the first 6, 7, 8 days that the teams had a pretty large advantage in the case. I said this on another program. If we're using uh, if we're comparing it to a race, it was the end of stage one, and the teams had about a 3-second lead at the end of stage one of the trial. and then they settled. So in my mind, they didn't see it to the end, which I feel like no one knows truly what would have happened. If we want to be serious about this, which I feel like we do, if we want to be really serious about this, if they had taken it to the end, teams probably would have won. But none of us know that. Of course, none of us know that. Um, and we don't know what would have happened had they taken it to the end and the teams would have won and Judge Bell would have been able to come down with whatever he wanted to come down with. Um, in the moment, I found it a bit interesting that they would be willing to settle sitting where they were at. Now, of course, as people pointed out, and it's very true, NASCAR, on their side of things, would have been feeling like, well, this isn't going well. But things don't have to be going well in a court case that you have barely been on the offensive for it to swing your way. But they clearly said this isn't going very well and we might not have a path back. So let's think about starting to settle this. And more power to them, they did. And more power to the teams, they did as well. Let's be 100% honest on this. I'm happy with the result we got, I think. In the moment, I'm happy with what we got. But no, they didn't take it to the end. I thought that was a bit strange. And, you know, like I said, long morning, pop off a tweet that's not 100% serious and snarky. Why not?
Well, I guess the response to that is this was a very serious legal matter, and so I think a lot of people and again, knowing where you stand on Denny, and we'll get into that here a little bit later as well, I'm sure. Maybe read it that way, but you're right. I think that the overwhelming well, the prevailing consensus is that it was not going well for NASCAR, and you even in the conversations that we've had, I think you also acknowledge, I think the fact that they felt as threatened as they claim by a 6 week summer series that had all sorts of problems in zone ride. I think that's why it only lasted 3 years before they couldn't keep the lights on, so to speak. Um, it just seems very bizarre to me that they would feel that way. Obviously, we had testimonies from Steve Phelps and Jim France that reportedly did not go very well, and the irony in Steve Phelps calling it the safest car in motorsports when Kurt Busch was driving for 2311 when he had his accident at Pocono that all but ended his career. I think certainly in the court of public opinion, it was certainly leaning much more strongly in favor of the teams on those fronts. But for the teams to be in that position, for NASCAR to be in that position, and for I think everybody, regardless of how you feel, would have preferred to see a settlement rather than this continue to play out as long as it had. I think the teams, and again, this is just me, I'm not a legal expert here, this is just, a guess on my part. They probably saw a lot of what we saw, and maybe the letter from Johnny Morris, of course, Bass Pro Shops, longtime sponsor of countless drivers and teams in this sport. The teams probably saw that they were in a good position. NASCAR probably saw they were in a not so good position. And rather than the teams saying, let's continue to fight this and let's put our fate in the hands of a jury and a judge that had admonished both sides on multiple occasions throughout this whole process, why don't we just take what we can get now through a settlement, and this whole thing can be done and dusted, and we can leave it at that. So, and like you said, I think we can all be happy that that is the outcome rather than, you know, God only knows where it would have led had it continued on there. But I also saw a tweet from you during the first week. I think this was after, I mean, Bob had sent a tweet out. It was Jordan walking into the courtroom or courthouse rather as a Bulls fan was playing the serious intro music. And you quoted it, and this one I don't think got hardly any attention. Certainly not compared to the one that you sent on Thursday. But you said NASCAR must win this case or has to win this case. I forget verbatim how you phrased it, but again, I think probably not along the lines of how many race fans were feeling at that particular point, at least in the trial. And I remember talking about this with you as recently as September, October. As long as this continued to to play out. I was saying, it looks like I don't know if the teams really have as much of a case as we thought they might, and who knows where it's going to play out in the off season. But I've been known as I want to make it clear to people. I have been known to change my mind at times when new information is revealed and new sources become clear. And I feel like I've tried to keep an open mind throughout this trial, and other fans have done the same. And yet you continue to hold firm on the side that NASCAR had to win this case. Why did you feel so adamantly that NASCAR had to win, at least at that point in the trial during the first week?
Because NASCAR's not in a bad place. Okay, inside the
You sure about that?
walls, inside the walls, things can change. That can be said for any sport, that inside the main walls of the people that make the big decisions, yes, there needs to be some change. I think we can all come to that conclusion. But I don't really care about that until that is the stuff that starts to affect my enjoyment of the sport on Sundays. I don't care. Maybe that's irresponsible of me. I don't care. I enjoy what I see every Sunday. And what I did not want to see is the teams win and NASCAR have to sell however many racetracks, 4, 6, I don't know how many. But I didn't want to see racetracks go away. I don't want to see a fundamental change to the sport. Some people do. I really don't. I like what I see on a week in, week out basis for 40 weeks or whatever it is. I mean, let's think about that. There's 52 weeks in a year, and we live this sport for about 40 of them each year, plus some in the case of this year. So we basically spend 75% of our calendar year embroiled in this sport. I kind of like where we're at. I didn't want to see a big fundamental change to it. That's just me. I know that some people do. That's perfectly fine. But no, I didn't want to see tracks get sold off, and I didn't want to see real big change brought on by Michael Jordan and this team that's been around for 5 minutes and a cup of coffee and think that they can change everything for the better. Maybe they can. It's just not for me. I like where
Well,
we're at.
well, I'm admittedly a little biased as a Delawarean, but I happened to much prefer when Dover Motorsports was the owner of Dover, really Dover Downs International Speedway, I would still call it, but obviously now Dover Motor Speedway, and now for the first time in my parents' lifetime, I think 1968, 1969, the last time that they didn't have a Cup Series points paying race. So I can't say I'm a huge fan of SMI, the SMI era of Dover. So I don't mind seeing independent track ownership. I don't know who would have been in line to purchase these tracks. I mean, again, who knows how many cans of worms would have been open? I understand that there would be a lot of concerns about how much the sport could have been reshaped had the judge ruled in favor of the teams there. But I want to follow up the first thing you said there. The sport isn't in a bad place. Why do you think the sport is not all doom and gloom as so many fans, perhaps you could say like myself, if you follow me on on Twitter, I get a lot of criticism for being a little too negative all the time, but I can't ignore grandstands being torn down, television ratings being at all-time lows. I mean, we saw less than 1.5 million people watch a playoff race in New Hampshire this year, and they tell me nobody's going to watch when we go up against the NFL if we don't have these playoffs. Maybe a preview of a discussion that's going to come on later in this episode. But um, why do you think there's reason to be hopeful for the future of the sport right now? What do you see? You say you like what you see. Maybe I don't know if that was intentional, quoting Phelps or O'Donnell or whoever said that originally, but what do you like in all seriousness? What do you like that you're seeing right now coming out of the sport?
It's it's as competitive as I can remember it being. Uh, the loads of race winners that we had in 2001, 2, and 3, I did not think we would ever make it back to that point, but we have in this next gen era. Now, the scales are starting to tip back towards the major teams. We saw this year a season dominated for the most part by the big three of Hendrick, Gibbs, and Penske. But in this next gen era, when regulations were changed, basically, and the car was changed, we have seen incredibly competitive racing. We've seen fairly new teams like 2311 and Trackhouse jump in and get to victory lane, and in Trackhouse's case, go to the championship four in the first year of the next gen car. And this is not just happening at the super speedways. Yes, Harrison Burton can win Daytona, and yes, Austin Cindric, who does have an oval, who does have a non-super speedway oval win now at Gateway, but Austin Cindric wins at Talladega or Daytona. But this is happening elsewhere. This is happening at road courses. This is happening at the quote unquote normal racetracks, which is really any racetrack normal at this point. They're all so unique. But Darrell Wallace Jr. can go out and win the Brickyard 400, and Chase Briscoe can go out with a team that's shutting its doors and win one of the crown jewel races and one of the toughest races, the Southern 500. And then he can turn around the very next year with a totally new team, new manufacturer, new everything, and win that race again. And really slapping the field silly in that race. It's just extremely competitive. We don't see many dull races, I don't think. I know other people do. Now, we've had this conversation in the past. How are you taking in races? And I know I'm in the very, very vast minority that I'm taking in races in a different way than most people are, which may lead to how I feel about races. But the competitive nature of the sport right now, I think, is as high or at least about as high as it's ever been. The word storylines, I think, has been has become one of those weird words in the sport right now, but I think even forgetting the playoffs, I think every single week you have storylines that are changing. Like just this year, Christopher Bell winning three races in a row at Atlanta, Coda, and Phoenix. And the way he won that Phoenix race, this great late laps duel with Denny Hamlin. Um, by the way, about that spring Phoenix race, it was a late restart and a great duel to the finish, but it did not go to overtime. It was a late caution that set up a late restart, but it wasn't in overtime. And then we go to Las Vegas, and we're all talking about Christopher Bell making history. How refreshing was it? I still remember, and this was what, in March? So this was 9 months ago. I can still remember how refreshing it was to not be at a playoff race, to not be at a crown jewel race, and to be so early in the season and talking about, boy, we could see history today. Christopher Bell winning four straight races at a track that he's really good at. And then what happens? Josh Berry shows up and wins it for the Wood Brothers at a place where I don't think they'd even had a top five before in their history, and they win that race at Las Vegas. It's just that kind of thing that I feel like is happening every week, and it's really good. So the on-track product, in my opinion, is really, really good.
Yeah, I would tend to agree for intermediates. I think the short tracks and road courses have maybe taken a step back from a Gen 6 era. And of course, what SVG is doing on the road courses, I mean, there hasn't been as much competition on those tracks this year, and who knows, I'm sure he's only going to continue to get more comfortable behind the wheel of a Cup Series car, and who knows if he figures the ovals out, then good luck to the rest of the field. But even before him, I think we could all acknowledge that it was unfortunate timing because I think fans were begging for more road courses. That's
Mhm.
why they brought the Roval in when they did, because they wanted to do it before they could even renegotiate contracts with the tracks to add a couple more to the schedule. They were that desperate to add one, and yet we bring this new car in, and we have a problem with how fans are viewing the intermediate races, the mile and a halfs, and certainly the the package from that era certainly didn't help fans' perception of that, I don't think. But they seem to fix that problem. But now it's the short tracks that are a problem. It's the road courses that are a problem, and I think they're going to continue to try to work on that as the years go on with this car. But um, yeah, I mean that's certainly more than fair. I think there is a good level of competition right now. And maybe this is just me putting the nostalgia glasses back on, but I do miss the days where you had anywhere from 45 to 50 cars showing up, and it was a real
Oh yeah.
possibility. But you could have, I mean, I just thinking back to '07, the first year I watched, you had, uh, Casey Kane had won 6 races the year before with Evernham, and his teammate Scott Riggs wasn't in the top 35 in 2007. Paul Menard wasn't in the top 35 in 2007. He was driving a DEI car that Martin Truex Jr. put him a chase that year, and obviously Dale Earnhardt Jr. had a lot of engine failures that year, but was still competitive at times. And and Paul's got the same equipment as them, and he is struggling to even qualify. The Toyota cars, when they could make the race, they could sometimes flex their muscles and be a little competitive, but none of them could stay in the top 35. So, I think, and that maybe leads us back to the trial a little bit here. I want to be clear, and I listened to Brock Beard's stream a couple of nights ago as well. I do have concerns about the future of this sport, given what has played out now. I mean, people know I've never particularly been a fan of a charter system. I do think there is something to be said for the idea that we've made this bed now, and if we're going to do this, we can't really take it away at this point. And it is good for the teams to have that added level of security here. And again, I'm not a business expert by any means. I'm not a legal expert by any means. I'm just going off of my gut. And again, I miss the days where, you could put an independent team together, and I guess you still can. We do see open teams from time to time, but it's not nearly as cost effective probably isn't the right word, but from a financial standpoint, it's not sustainable to run as an open team, and I think that's why all the pressure was on 2311 in front row, because if the judge had ruled in NASCAR's favor and they hadn't gotten their charters back, then that probably would have been the end of their journey, at least in their current form. So again, just to kind of draw it all back, I do have concerns about how all this played out, but and I do miss the days pre-charter where I feel like you had it was easier. The barrier of entry was a lot lower, I think, is what I'm trying to
Mhm.
say there. So I think that there's something to be said for that as well. But I suppose the counter to that, and I'm not making this argument, I'm not a fan of the argument. I'm just saying I think the people that maybe didn't view the start and park era so as fondly as Brock Beard and I did, will tell you that now there's 36 chartered entries, and we're talking about Cody Ware maybe shocking the world at Daytona. Like any of those 36 cars could, in theory, play their cards right in the draft and win a race like that. Maybe from that perspective, the competition is the strongest as it's ever been. So I do see where you're coming from in that perspective as well.
I mean, I'm more than happy to put on to go down memory lane and play the nostalgia game. I'm one of the best at doing it. The 2007 Daytona 500 qualifying races was just about a full field. Both of those races. There were 31 cars in those races in 2007. James Harvey Hilton nearly raced his way into the Daytona 500. It was spectacular. But that doesn't mean that what we have now is worse, or at least light years worse. Um, Speaking of the Daytona 500 qualifying races, do those even have a future at this point? Are we going to
Good
have open
question.
teams
Yeah.
that compete and make those Thursday races completely meaningless? Because if we kick the can down the road and we get to 2030 and there are no more open teams trying to make the 500 and there are no more than 40 entries for the 500, you know what the teams are going to say. We don't want to race those races because we don't want to take the risk of crashing race cars 3 days before our biggest race of the year. And then they'll disappear, I'm sure. That wouldn't be great. I would hate that. Those have been going on since the Daytona 500 has been going on.
Yeah. And well, and again, I guess if you want to go way back and I mean, this is going back before either of our times here, but I think people might forget that those used to be points races back in the day. They used to treat them
Yeah.
as full championship races. Forget who it was. I think was Johnny Rutherford maybe. They were going back after SVG won Chicago in 23, like who's won in their Cup Series debut, and somebody had a win technically that was in a Daytona qualifier, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, those used to be those used to be points races back in the day." So I guess you would maybe have to do something like that. You'd have to make those races matter in a
Hmm.
different way than they do now, just for your starting position. If you don't have the open teams that are actually trying to race their way into the field, and even now, if you only have 42 cars, there's really somebody's locked in on speed from. It's not Sunday anymore, right? I mean, speed weeks has been condensed
Yeah.
already, but um, from single car qualifying, pole qualifying to set the front row, somebody's locked in on speed, which means you really have one driver that's trying to race, that's going to race
Yeah.
their way in, and one that's not. But if the driver that races their way in is also the one that qualified on speed, then it goes to the next car on speed rather than the highest finisher. Ty Dillon figured that out in
Yeah.
2021, I think, when he was with the Gaunt brothers. So, it's already changed from that perspective. And again, I can't say I'm a huge fan of the status of those races or the All-Star race or the Clash, to be quite honest. We've been moving that around, and it feels like it's kind of, I mean, maybe we've got something going here with Bowman Gray. We'll see how long that lasts, but it feels like everything that made those exhibition races special and gave them their own identity has kind of been stripped over the last decade and a half or so. But
I can fix all of that at a later date too. I have an answer for all of that. I
there you
promise.
go. Yeah. Well, we'll see if that comes up here again in the conversation. But um, the other big talking point from the off season, which we haven't gotten an answer yet, and I think if history is any precedent here, I think stage racing was announced in the middle of January in 2017, so it could still be as much as a month away. But we are almost certain we are getting a new championship format in 2026, whether that's going to be a modified playoff with two three-race rounds and a four-race final round, or a return of a 10-race chase, or what I am continuing to hold out hope for, a full season format. I think a lot of people holding out hope for that, is unlikely as it may be. We are almost positive that the era of the one race championship is over. And again, you and I were going back and forth on Friday night as it looked like Corey Heim had it locked and all but clinched. And then it's who was it? Connor Mosack, I think, one of the BMR trucks or MHR trucks, I should say. Completely unrelated to the championship battle, blows a tire, hits the wall, caution comes out, everything gets reset, and it takes a seven wide move from Corey Heim and he wins the championship anyway, though. So we can all be grateful that he did that, and we got our thrilling finish, and it wasn't just him coasting to he went out and earned it, and then we get to Saturday night, and your other double-digit race winner, Connor Zilisch, gets passed in the closing laps by Jesse Love, loses the Drivers' Championship, gets passed for second in the closing laps by Eric Almirola. The number 88 Junior Motorsports team loses the Owners' Championship. And I was waiting for Carson Kvapil to come around and pass him for third so that Connor wouldn't even get Rookie of the Year. What a story that would have been. But I want to ask you, because you have told me multiple times this year you are really high on the talent that Connor Zilisch has. I think a lot of people are really excited to see what he can do. You really love this kid's story. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I take it you're probably not the biggest fan of Richard Childress. And his car is the one that stops Connor Zilisch from winning a championship in an unbelievably dominant season under virtually any other format would have been the champion by a mile. And because he only only had a third place car in the final race, he doesn't get that championship. And your reaction is just, well, all he had to do was hold the lead. I can't really be that mad. How were you not as going losing your mind as much as I was that night? How are you feeling that way?
I just had to hold the lead, and it all would have been well. I mean, I don't know. I've I feel like it's just I don't even know how to describe it at this point. It's just what we do. Or it has been what we do. Maybe it won't be going forward, and that's fine too. But believe me when I say I understand everything that people like you and so many others say about hating this system, about how it just, the rightful champion was not crowned in the Xfinity Series in 2025. What I can't get behind is dismissing Jesse Love winning the championship. And you're not doing that. Some people
Appreciate that.
are. But as I said repeatedly after that, it is not as if NASCAR strapped Connor Zilisch into that car with his hands tied behind his back and forced him to drive the race with his knees. He had the lead with 30 laps to go. If he holds on to the lead for those laps, he wins the championship. Great. I wish he had, but he didn't. That's just what happens sometimes is you don't hold on to the lead in the last 30 laps. But as we both know, huge ramifications. And I'm not even talking about Connor Zilisch getting a license somewhere else. That's
Oh, don't get me
stupid.
started with that. Don't get me started with the FIA and super
No,
licenses and
yeah,
Colton Herta in a Formula 2 car. Do not get me started with that.
yeah, yeah, no. But I understand the anger behind it. But at the same time, we have done that for 11 years now, at least on the Cup side, and for a little bit less on the other two series. I think I had just got to, I just come to accept that that's how we do it. But as I've told you many times since all of this happened, it's like whatever we do, I'm here for it. We can go back to the Ladford system if we wanted to. I'd be here for it. Now, that wouldn't be my choice, but if we did it, I'm here for it. I'm not going anywhere. I haven't gone anywhere from this sport since I was born. So, but no, I get the anger, I get the frustration, but I guess for whatever reason, I've just gotten beyond being angry about it all. I can't tell you that there's a reason why either. I don't have an explanation for that.
Yeah. Well, and again, I guess that, since you brought it up, I'm not saying when I say full season, I think a lot of people just automatically assume I'm saying Lafford. I'm not saying Lafford. I do think that the Lafford system could have done a better job giving the race winner more of an advantage over second and second, more of an advantage over third than say 22nd over 23rd. I think there need to be higher bonuses for winning races. I think that's something that
Yeah,
IndyCar and F1's point systems do a little bit better job in. I'm not saying we need to be Formula One either and only award points to the top 10. I do think everybody in the field should be given points and there should be an incremental jump there. But all I'm saying is I think it needs to be the totality of the season needs to be judged. And I get what people say, like, oh, you can earn playoff points and bonus points and stage points, and your points tally up, and you have these playoff points that carry over, and it's a whole process just to get to the championship board, right? I understand all that, but then it does just come down to one race, or then you win one of the first however many races, and you've accomplished the hardest part of that, like winning Daytona, for example. I don't think the word playoffs should come out of a Daytona 500 winners interview. Your first thought when you win Daytona or even, Vegas or Coda or an early season
yeah,
race, your first thought shouldn't be, man, we're in the playoffs 5 months from now or 6 months from now, right?
right.
I'm reminded of when Ross Chastain won whichever race that was. It might have been Kansas, one of the intermediates in 2024, and I think Marty Snyder said the word playoffs 5 times before the microphone was put in Ross Chastain's face. And Ross is just like, we just won a cup race, man. This is it's not easy to do. Like, because I mean, because he's not in the playoffs, it's not on his mind. He's out there trying to win a cup race, and that's the key difference, I think, from quote unquote our sport to the NFLs and NBAs and Major League Baseballs of the world is we have everybody out there competing all at once. And they always make that joke, yeah, we should just have maybe we really should just put the championship four drivers out on track because the RFK cars stay out during that final caution and it completely jumbles up the field. And we had a couple of truck drivers do that, I think, during that last
Yeah.
restart. And Tommy Joe Martins was talking about how I tell my team all the time, don't be the story at Phoenix. And a couple of these teams tried really hard. Like it's so chaotic. And I think it is in many ways possible to win one of these races by complete accident, right?
Yeah.
Like Justin Haley gets a perfectly timed lightning strike in a Spire Motorsports car. Spire was not even close to what they are now the first year that they had purchased Furniture Rose Charter. They were absolutely nowhere. They were lucky to be a top 30 team on most weekends, but he stayed out at the right time, and that's how he gets his and Spire's first win, and there was I remember seeing Bob's tweets because everybody was asking, is Spire in the owners playoffs? Because we still have a top 30 rule at the time. Like that one win, I don't think should guarantee, and this is the conversation with Harrison Burton as well.
Hmm.
One race win jumps you from 34th to 16th. That kind of bothers me just as much as championship implications. That's going through looking at the entire standings. I think the standings should be indicative roughly of how your season went. And
Right.
nothing against Harrison Burton or the Wood brothers, but 16th place is not where that car was running most weekends or throughout the season in 2024. But that's where he finishes in points. And maybe a guy who would have finished ninth or 10th in points that just didn't happen to win. I mean, it doesn't even have to be that they didn't win a race. It just they didn't win a race in the first 26 and they're locked
Hmm.
out. And 17th is the highest. Well, what happened to Martin Truex Jr. in 2022 when we had all that parity going back to what you were talking about with how competitive the first year of an X Gem was? There's no reason he should have been really any lower than fifth in points entering the playoffs, and yet he falls all the way to 17th. So, I mean, again, I can beat this dead horse as long as I want to here. I can just keep going for the entire night. I don't want to completely monopolize the rest of our time together here.
Ah,
I, I,
Monopoly, you say.
I think, oh, there you go. Um, I think, I think I know where you stand. I think, you've been clear before, but you love the sport and you're happy
Hmm.
to be a part of it no matter what we do. But if you could, in the words of Ricky Craven, be king for a day and make the decision, what would be your preferred championship format and why? And if it's full season, what would be roughly the structure that you would want to see there? Would you keep
Right.
stage points? Would you just go back to, would you make sure the winner leaves the track with the most points no matter what? What would be your answer to that?
Right. So yeah, we can certainly bang this out to the point where we have it perfected. I had a conversation with someone while I was doing another show just a couple of weeks ago. If you were to give me just the three options of what we've done of Latford, 10 race chase, elimination style playoffs, if you just gave me those three choices, I would probably choose elimination playoffs just because I think we have gotten to the point where we are rewarding regular season excellence as much as we can with this format. And I think that's huge. I do. Now, what we did the first couple of years with this elimination playoffs did not reward regular season whatsoever. And that got messy quick, like first year. Messy.
Well, you would know as a
But,
Jeff Gordon fan, right?
right, yeah, exactly. But if there are so many ways. See, this is what makes this such a difficult but yet fun conversation to have. Fun if you can have a conversation with people that don't yell at you all the time. Is that we could do this a million different ways. If I could make it the way that I wanted it to, I would come up with some kind of format where the winner gets paid so many more points than second that winning becomes again the ultimate of everything, and let's just go full season. Let's work it out to a point on some kind of scale where winning is so vastly more important than settling for a fifth place finish because you don't think you have a winning car. I don't put whatever numbers you want to it. Personally, I have enjoyed the 1 point per position system because it's just easy to remember and you don't have to do math. But you can have positions staggered for top three, top five, top 10, and then maybe go one position from 11th on back if you wanted to do that. What I typed down, and I'll try not to get so immersed with the numbers here because I know when you're hearing people just say numbers instead of actually seeing them, you kind of get lost. What I have here is you win the race and you get 125 points. Second gets 100, so that's a 25-point gap. Third gets 80, so that's 20 points the drop from second to third. Then every position from third to fifth is staggered by 10. Then every position beyond that is staggered by 5 until 10th, to the point of 10th place is now getting 35 points. Now, maybe this is too dramatic. And again, this is why you feel like maybe you need a committee to come up with this stuff. Would it be fair for the winner to get 125 points and then 10th to get 35? I mean, that's a difference of 90 points. That's a large difference. But again, that puts so much emphasis on winning. With this system or a system like that, let's go full season. Let's do it. Because now you get the best of both worlds. Because you're right. The win and in, we don't know what NASCAR is going to announce in January. I am hopeful that win and in is no longer because of all of the points that you've made. Daytona 500 winner talking about being in the playoffs. Are you kidding? Do you even want to touch the Harley J. Earl Trophy? Winning a crown jewel race should stand on its own. Winning, period, should stand on its own. Josh Berry winning at Las Vegas, as we talked about, or a thrilling finish, whatever it may be, that should stand on its own and not have the ramifications of Harrison Burton is now the poster child for this, and I hate that for him because I doubt he wants to be the poster child for this. But he's now the poster child of what it means to have a 30 whatever place car in points win a race, and by the waving of the magic wand that is the checkered flag, he's in the playoffs all of a sudden, and now he's trying to celebrate his first win, and everybody's asking him about the playoffs, and everybody on Twitter is just so incredibly angry that he's in the playoffs, and somehow that turns into anger towards him, and he doesn't deserve any of that. So I do hope that winning in leaves us, but back to our king for a day conversation, I would like a system that rewards winning so much more that we get the best of both worlds. And as far as stages, I do whatever you want. I don't care. If we have three stages and we award stage points, fine. Really, in this system, I don't think we need it. I don't know if we need it in any other system. I mean, I like what we have of, this is for a playoff point, and we know how important 1 point could be, but, I don't know if that's necessary. I don't know. Now, of course, see, this turns into a totally different conversation when we talk about stages, doesn't it? Because TV loves stages so they can get extra commercials in. And we were told, what, 8 years ago or whatever, when stages started, we were told this would mean less commercials during green flag racing. And honestly, I cannot tell that we have less commercials in green flag racing.
Yeah, well, the whole stage is, I mean, that's a can of worms that I don't open nearly as much because I don't think it's quite as important as what determines our champions and what doesn't. But I believe that, you're right. Winning should matter, and winning the idea that the winner of Daytona 500, for example, maybe they don't finish top 10 in either of the stages, right? Very much possible, especially at a track like that. Um, so the Daytona 500 winner leaves with 40 points, but maybe there's a couple of drivers that finish top 10 in both stages and they finish second and third
Yeah.
in the race and they have 50 some odd points. And so your Daytona 500 champion is leaving the 500 fifth in points
Yeah.
because they don't leave a track with or any race where that happens. The race winner doesn't leave a track with the most points. I don't think that should ever be a possibility. Whoever has won the race has the biggest prize of the day. They should be rewarded for that with the highest points value leaving the track. And stage cautions again. I've said I'm no longer willing to compromise on a postseason of some sort. I want a full season format, regardless of what the point system is. But I would be willing to accept what we tried on the road courses in 2023 until we got to the playoffs, and then we changed our rules in the middle of the playoffs, right? Imagine that. Um, but not throwing the caution, which I guess is the whole point of why TV loves it, right? Because you get, but I was pulling my hair out watching the Truck Series Talladega race just a couple of months ago, and we got to the end of stage one, and stage two is 20 laps to 20 lap stage, and the green flag comes back out on lap seven of stage two. So we've run 30% of stage two under caution from the caution for stage one when there's no cleanup on the track that's necessary. Like, it's like, what are we doing here? So I guess that fans like the restarts, but that's something where I really struggle. I don't understand why so many people seem to be so adamant that we need fewer green flag laps, that we need to take away more green flag laps because, oh, they're getting too strung out, or, oh, there's it's not as exciting to see that. I don't know. I personally think it's not too exciting watching the pace car lead the cars around under
Yeah.
uh caution caution lap speed. But anyway, that's again a whole nother issue we could get into. I do agree with your point. I think that if they get rid of a playoff format, then stages don't become as valuable, right? Because you're not racing for a playoff point. I guess you would still be racing
Hmm.
for stage points of some sort, however many bonus points you would want to bring in there. But
Yeah,
again,
but
it's going to be
I
interesting to
think
see what they do.
I think just like overall on this, I mean, we could sit here, we could all, like I said, you could find 20 of us to give what kind of system we would like, and you'd get 20 different kind of systems. We don't know what NASCAR's thinking, but what we're hearing is possibly a 10 race chase, possibly playoff series of 4-3-3 or 3-4-4, whatever that may be. I mean, I would rather not complicate it for people.
That's
It
the
could
other point.
already be
Yeah,
overwhelming. Now, again, I sit here and I live it every single week, stage points, playoff points, regular season points. I know what it all means. But I can't take myself out of my shoes and say, does a new fan understand all of this? I don't know. But I can imagine it could be overwhelming if you're trying to add it all up in your head and decipher what all of it means. But like I said, we're in a really weird place because over the last 25 years, and let's be honest, 25 years is not a terribly long time, right? In human history. um, in the last 25 years, how many different championship formats have we had? We've had Chase, we've had playoffs, we've had Latford, plus we've changed the Chase a couple of times from 10 to 12 and all of that. And plus we've changed playoffs with playoff points and all of that. It would just be nice if we could find something and stick to it. I think would be great. And I think to your point, and the point that a lot of people in your corner make, is full season points would be something great to lay down and stick with it forever, like we seem to do before 2004. But we know what drives this conversation is so much TV, and not even really as much TV as just NBC, right? Why does Fox care what kind of championship format we have? They
well,
don't cover that
for,
part of the
for trucks,
season.
I guess, but yeah,
Yeah,
for Cup, they're obviously Cup is where all the prestige would be. But
yeah. So we we understand where we're at. We're in this incredible tug of war on do we want do we want a high level of entertainment or do we want the legitimacy of a champion? And it's so interesting and ironic that we're having this conversation on the day that we're recording this, the day before the NBA Cup final. Now I know we get really touchy when we compare stick and ball sports to our motorsports. I get it, but if you could just bear with me, the Oklahoma City Thunder came into the NBA Cup semifinals on Saturday night 24-1, which is just a stupid good record. They are officially in play to go for history, to go for the all-time regular season wins record in NBA history, which is 73, of course, set by the Warriors in 2015, 2016. They are overwhelmingly the best team in the NBA. That doesn't mean they're going to win the championship because the Warriors didn't that year. Things happen. But they are overwhelmingly the best team in the NBA. If we played Premier League rules or just European football rules, they would already have one hand on the trophy because they've gotten off to such a great start. But in the NBA Cup, which includes group play and then single elimination play, they were knocked out in a single elimination semifinal game on Saturday by the San Antonio Spurs. So they're not going to win this NBA Cup despite being the best team in the NBA. The Detroit Pistons, you could say, are no worse than the fifth best team in the NBA, and they didn't even make the knockout stage of the NBA Cup. What I'm getting to all of this is that's kind of where we are over here in our NASCAR world of do you want the entertainment value of it all or do you want the legitimacy of it all? Because the Spurs and Thunder game was tremendous. It was a great NBA basketball game that you don't often get in the regular season. A game where it feels like the players are just going 100%, 100% of the time. But at the end of the season, if those two meet in a postseason series, it's going to be best of seven, right? And the Thunder are probably going to win in 5 or 6 games, one would think, in a postseason series with the Spurs. So you kind of see where I'm getting to this is do you want the single elimination chaos, the madness that we have in March with college basketball, or do you want the legitimacy?
Well,
That is only up to you to decide. And I think that's obviously what NASCAR is wrestling with of what they want.
I think the answer to that would be, would you rather have the NBA Cup or Valerie O'Brien Trophy? And
Sure.
so we can take. I know how much you liked Ty Dillon's Cinderella run in the in-season challenge this year, right? But we can have maybe we can have our cake and eat it too. Maybe you can have the thrill of single elimination knockout style racing here, and that's what the NBA Cup is, single elimination for the NBA. But your championship is still again, and this is why I was just kind of like whatever, when they announced this in-season challenge or in-season tournament for NASCAR, because to me, it's going to be cool for whoever wins it, I guess, to have that on their resume and whatever $1 million means now. But it doesn't supplant or replace the value,
hmm
at least what the championship is supposed to have in terms of value. I don't know. You hear what everybody says about it nowadays, and I don't know if it holds as much value in the eyes of a lot of people as it did 20 years ago, and I think that's a shame. But again, that goes back to the whole discussion about legitimacy, and I'm glad you brought that up because I'm not blaming Jesse Love. Wouldn't have blamed Caden Honeycutt if he had come out of nowhere and stolen the truck title. I'm not blaming Kyle Larson. What happened with William Byron, and they nailed their last pit stop. They were in the right place at the right time. More power to them. And they had the most points by one metric at least. I think under Latford it would have been Christopher Bell. But I
Right.
think under the current points format with stages and everything, I think it was Kyle Larson that had the most. And yet, because of how it played out, it still feels wrong that he's the
Well,
champion with
okay.
what happened. So that's just to me like this was if Joey Logano surviving quintuple overtime, and we'll get into overtime in a minute, if him surviving quintuple overtime at Nashville and then surviving a part falling off of Alex Bowman's car at the Roval and getting back into the round of 8 because of that and winning that championship with a 17.1 average finish, if that wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back, how is the entire championship being turned on its head with 3 laps to go? Not an additional straw that has only further broken the camel's back at this point, but I will let you respond to that because I know you have some
Sure.
opinions too.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point that I was getting to the previous point of maybe, I don't know, maybe if we continue with this in-season tournament, again, I didn't see a point of the in-season tournament with what, because no, it's not the same as the playoffs, but we already have elimination style playoffs, so do we need an elimination style bracket thing in the middle of the season? I didn't think so. But like you said, if we go back to a full season point system, then maybe we can have the in-season tournament in the middle, and then we get it both. We get both of the, the glorious. But again, to your to everyone's point that we were just talking about with the NBA Cup over the weekend. The Knicks are in the final of the NBA Cup. The Knicks have not sniffed a trophy since 1973. They also believe they have a team that can win the NBA championship this year. If they win that, as we record tomorrow night, what does that mean for Knicks fans, right? I don't. The players get $1 million, and that's great for the players that are on the end of the bench and all of that. For fans, because that's really what we're talking about here. For fans of the Knicks, how much do you care that you win the NBA Cup? Because again, you have not won a trophy in 50 years. But this isn't the trophy that you want and that you think you can win. Spin it to NASCAR. Yeah, if Ty Dillon were to win this thing this past year, that would have been spectacular for him and Colleague, and Chris Rice could lose his mind about it. Um, and of course, a lot of this got started because we started it at Atlanta and then had a parking lot and stage whatever, start of stage two, I think it was. But yeah, if we go back to full season points, and then we have that part, and then we have an in-season tournament in the middle, maybe we can just all get what we want. We can get entertainment and we can get legitimacy. I don't know. Um, you brought up though Denny Hamlin. Why was everybody so angry at the end of the race at Phoenix? Like
Well,
that's still what I can't truly wrap my brain around is just the anger that we had at the end of that at the end of the cup finale. I get Saturday night. The cup finale. Everyone was so upset.
I think it was the combination of Friday and Saturday night. I think forget the drivers for just a second because I mean Denny had people that were maybe on his side in the lawsuit or people that felt bad for him because 20 again talk about 20 years of trying 20 years of frustration, right? He's been trying this since 2006. This is his 20th full-time year and he's 3 laps away. And it's not like he had lucked into the lead. I mean, he had led over
Mm-hmm.
what 200 laps that day. So I mean,
Right.
under he had done everything that this current system had asked him to do. He had won the right races at the right times to get to the championship four and was going to win this race. And then something completely outside of his control, completely unrelated to the guy who ended up winning the championship anyway, completely changes the outcome. I think, at least for me, that was like I couldn't. I mean, I was maybe rooting for Denny a little bit because it had been so long and Kyle already had one, but I didn't really care who won it or lost it. I just my fundamental problem with what happened on Sunday was it looked like it was going one way. Nobody would have been talking about the guy that it looked like it was going his way as being undeserving under the circumstances. He had done everything right on that day, and it's a blown tire that causes a caution with 3 to go, and this is where overtime comes in again
Mm-hmm.
because we are so hell bent on we must do everything in our power to get a green flag finish. It forces them onto pit road. The field gets shuffled. Some drivers stay out because, oh, yeah, that's right. We're trying to win a cup race here. There's
Mm.
still a cup race trophy on the
Mm.
line. Brad Keselowski hasn't won in how long, right? He wants to win this race. He doesn't care what happens with the championship. And all of that converges into a mad 2 lap dash where they can take it 7 wide in the dog leg at Phoenix. And it makes, again, this is just my opinion. I think a lot of people share the opinion, but it's my opinion nonetheless. it felt too much like a lottery for what the prize is supposed to be. And that's just again, that's the irony in the fact that the guy that ended up scoring the most points total wins it, and we still don't, we still aren't satisfied with the outcome. I hope that is at least an honest attempt to answer your question. I think it was forget the drivers for just a second. It was how it all played out felt like you were spinning a roulette wheel, and it happened to go Kyle Larson's way and not Denny Hamlin's way because he happened to be leading by 3 seconds when somebody. I mean, at least it was another one of the championship contenders, I guess. Go ask Carl Edwards how he felt when Dylan Lupton blew a tire. He was going to win that championship, and although that wasn't even with as few laps to go as this one, but it's the same idea. And again, a guy that I think had the sympathy value for him because he had been in the sport for a long time. He hadn't won a championship yet. He had come close a couple times. Um, anyway, I hopefully that answers, or is again at least attempts to answer your question there.
Yeah, and I guess that's just where I stand. There's a line where there are groups stand where we crossed a line th- last year with Logano winning it, this year with how it finished. People are really upset about it. I'm just not. Again, I think there's part of this that's, I don't know if it's psychological, I don't know what it is, but I now no longer have a rooting interest, but you don't either. But I'm to the point where I don't have a rooting interest anymore. I don't care who wins the championship. So I just roll with the punches, I guess.
If I
I
could
just,
just follow up on that though, I think that only strengthens my convictions
right.
because
Yeah.
I don't care. I mean, maybe if Colin could put together the greatest season of all time and AJ Allmendinger were in the championship. Well, in Xfinity a couple years ago, I'm not going to lie. There was a small part of me that would have liked to have seen AJ win at least one of those. And he didn't even. I mean, his 2022 was a lot like Kevin Harvick's in 2020. Like how did he not even make the championship for that year? It's just mind-boggling. But yeah, I'm not going to lie. I would have maybe liked to see him win one of those Xfinity titles. And if by some crazy turn of events he was in a Cup championship for, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a small part. I mean, it's my childhood favorite driver for crying out loud. But aside from him, I really, like you said, couldn't care much who wins or loses these races nowadays. There
Hmm.
are certain storylines to play out that I think are cool, where I say like, well, if I could script it this way, I'd like to see this happen. I'd like to see this young up and comer have some success. I'd like to see this veteran that hasn't won in a while maybe get one more win before he hangs it up. But for the most part, I don't care. But because I don't care, I just want to see a I hesitate to use the word because I don't think they're undeserving necessarily, but I want to see a champion that is universally recognized as deserving,
Mm.
where there's no debate. Nobody's pointing out Joey Logano's average finish last year and saying how is this guy? I want something that crowns somebody who we can all look at and say, yes, that is somebody who deserves to be lifting that trophy at the end of the year. And how that played out, nobody can argue this. Nobody can take it away from them. And believe me, you can have that. Go ask the Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton fans about 2021, right? It's not like you can't have that in a full season. I mean, there are shenanigans that can be played and games that can be played in a full season format as well. But I just think when you have so many resets and so many cut lines and so many different opportunities for something stupid to happen, it is exponentially more likely that it will. And maybe this leads us into the overtime conversation, but
Yeah.
you not only with overtime now, you not only have brought the championship doesn't only come down to the final race, it comes down to a final restart in the final race. If they had crashed with two to go, we would have done it all over again. So I can't even say the final restart because there may be final restarts, right? We may try this 3 times. We may try this 5 times like we did at Nashville a year and a half ago. So I mean, again, it feels like they have maxed with everything we talked about, playoff stages, overtime. They have gone full all in on maximizing the entertainment value, no matter how the fan base views it as legitimate. And I think that has been to their detriment and a big part of the reason why you've seen the ratings continue to dip. I don't think it's just one contributing factor. I think there are a whole number of, I mean, the television landscape has certainly changed since
Mm.
2005. I'm a game show fan as well. I know you are. Also, game shows aren't pulling in as many viewers as they used to be. Streaming is obviously a big part of that too. But when the dip has been so massive, I think you have to look at some of the decisions the sanctioning body has made, and it's hard not to make the correlation there.
So, but what I'm so interested in, we're talking about everyone's reaction post Phoenix. We had a championship four where you could say those were the four best drivers this year, except for maybe Christopher Bell. But I think everyone looked at those four drivers, they would be a rightful champion. We ran a race. We had a race where what happened at the end isn't unusual. I mean, we get it plenty. We've known it to happen plenty of a late race caution, running order gets jumbled up late, result is changed. It's not like, to the point that we were coming up with earlier, it's not like all of this happened and Harrison Burton wins the championship. Like, it wasn't that random. We had Kyle Larson, former series champion already, one of the greats of his era, win a championship, and everyone just was so angry by it. And I was just very taken aback by that part of it. Um, I was just very taken aback by the anger that we had for that. And because again, like you said, we get the late yellow and we get Brad Keselowski trying to break a long winless drought and Ryan Preece try to win for the first time ever. And then Larson takes two and Denny takes four. And but that's happened before. None of that was unprecedented. It was just unprecedented in the championship race.
Sure, and I think that, and again, thinking back to some of the conversations you back and forth you and I have had over Twitter, I think you brought up Davey Allison in 1992, right? Competitor completely unrelated to a championship battle blows a tire, he gets caught up in that, and that alters the outcome of that championship battle. But I think that the response to that, and what I tweeted in response to that as well, is that in the full season battle, you can look back at when Davey gave up points here, when Alan Kawicki made up points there, when maybe Bill Elliott gave up points here, or when he went on a run there, and all of that adds up over the course of a full season. And you can look back and say, well, it's unfortunate that this happens here, but man, if we just hadn't done that there, or if we had maximized our chances there, then this wouldn't have mattered. In this particular format, where it comes down to one race, and the guy leading the race, in this case, Denny Hamlin, does everything right in this one race and is 3 laps away from winning this race. And then the blown tire unrelated to the title battle happens, or the late caution happens. You can't walk away from having your race compromised by something outside of your control and say that anymore, because it doesn't. If Denny Hamlin had won every single one of the first 35 races, it still wouldn't have helped him in that scenario. There's nothing you can do to look back and say, well, if it obviously sucks what happened here, but if it hadn't happened then over there, then we would have had the points to make up for that and make that not matter. When you even everything out and make just one race matter here, I think it makes the pill undeniably harder to swallow.
But they could have audibled and taken two. They still could have audibled and taken two.
They could have,
I
but
will stand by that. Larson on the backstretch had already pulled out of his box before Denny had even gotten into his, and Chris Gale could have audibled and went for two. I, I
yeah,
will
I
I
can't
will stand by that.
I can't deny that. I will say, I think given how many tire issues we had seen all throughout the day at Phoenix, and given what Corey Heim had done just 2 nights earlier, I got to be honest, I thought that the tire advantage over the course of two laps, and especially with the RFK cars staying out and jumbling up the front row, I thought that Denny was going to have a path to make the pass happen. Obviously, he didn't, and that's what led to the ongoing discussions that we've been having for the last month and a half. So you are right. They could have. But hindsight's always 2020. In hindsight, I can
Hmm.
we can laugh at Chris Gale all we want. We can say it wasn't a good call, it wasn't the right call. But I think in the context of that weekend, in the context of that race, in that moment, I can't necessarily fault him for taking four in that situation.
Hmm.
But again, even if you say you can, like the fact that an entire championship comes down to that last restart in the last race after something like that happens when it looks like the result's going to go one way, it feels like, again, this goes back to the lottery feeling of it. Just the pendulum swings back and forth so quickly, or maybe it stops swinging and then something completely outside of your control swings it back.
Right.
I think it just, again, it's hard for fans to reconcile that, regardless of
But
who's involved.
I will just say I would counter that with 1992, which everyone loves to bring up. We had a lot of that same stuff happen. As far as Bill Elliott having so many issues down the stretch of the season, not of his own doing, and Davey having issues, not of his own doing. Like sometimes well, not sometimes, most of the time, that's the sport. And things just happen. Things just randomly happen in this sport that sometimes throws everything on its head. I understand why we get so angry when random stuff happens that changes the fabric of what we think we're watching. But I think that's just sports, right?
Well, I mean, again, my counter to that would be we are motorsports. Motorsports is a sport, but I think that, trying to, I think that was Mamba's line all for the last couple of months, right? That's people brought up Corey Heim, people brought up Connor Zilisch, and he just said, I'm going to be heartbroken for those guys, but that's sports. We are not like every other sport. We have a sport in place where everybody's on the same track every week competing against one another, and you don't need head-to-head matches to look at the
Hmm.
season as it's gone by and say, okay, that guy's clearly the best, or those guys are clearly the best, and then we tally up the points to see who, has the slight edge over one another. Again, bringing up 1992 again, I think you have the benefit of, you're right. Anything can happen on any given race weekend, but because
Hmm.
anything can happen, because something outside of your control can alter the finish of a race, that's just what I can't reconcile is the fact that, again, I'm not, of course, it doesn't all come down to, like, you have to get to the championship four. I understand that. But then you get to the championship four, and then among those four, it does just come down to one race. And it doesn't matter if you have one win or 10 wins, or in Matt Crafton's case in 2019, zero wins. Like, as long as you don't even have to win. And maybe that was part of the other thing, too. Like, the fact that Kyle Larson didn't even win the race. Um, Ryan Blaney won the race instead. And it takes 20 minutes to get a post-race interview from him because all the focus is on, right. It's just there's so many different layers to that the more you think about it, it's just, the more absurdities that I find here. And again, I would not love, again, I know I say I'm done compromising. When I say I'm done compromising, that means I'm going to fight for a full 36 and not take anything less than that. Like, of course, I think a 10 race chase is less bad. I'm not going to say better, but it's less. There's more merit to that than there is what we're doing right now. I even think there's more merit to a 3-3-4 than what we're doing right now. But I think the thing is, if you go to a 3-3-4, you are admitting you need a larger sample
Uh-huh.
size. And if you have
Yeah.
admitted you need a larger sample size, then why not just take the largest sample size available to you and just go all the way in the other direction. That's my opinion.
And as I've said many times, either just give me full point, full season, or give me elimination playoffs. I don't want to go in between because now you're trying to thread a needle between two fan bases and you're trying to please everyone. And when you try to do that, you please no one. So either give me the full 36 or give me what you got
Yep.
now. Either go push all your chips into the entertainment corner or push it all into the legitimacy corner. We've seen 10 race chase. I don't feel like I need to see that again. Um, Obviously, we've seen full season, but again, as we've talked about, we could tweak that or overhaul it, tweak, overhaul, whatever you want to do to it to make that different. There's also part of me, I mentioned, I had done another show a couple of weeks ago that had a lot of these same conversations. I also wonder too if we've had just this groundswell of people that want full season points. There's part of me that also wonders, have we gotten that because we've we just haven't seen it for a long time? You could be a 20-year-old NASCAR fan having never seen that now. And if you've never seen something, there's always, it's just being human. It's human nature wanting to be curious about things. And do you want to just see it because either you've never seen it or you haven't seen it for a very long time? Is that why we've got people that are really banging the drum? I don't know. Um, I something that I've been saying a lot lately. If you try really hard enough, you can poke holes in as many submarine screen doors as you want to the point we were just talking about with 92. Bill Elliott goes into Charlotte with this big points lead on everybody, and particularly Kawicki. It's a broken sway bar that makes him finish 30 something. Totally out of his control, but it happened. That's just what happens in this sport, is that random things can happen at random times. But anyway, speaking of randomness, we gonna talk about overtime?
I yeah, well, yeah, I guess we have to because again, like I said, we can continue kicking that playoff can down the road and who knows what's going to happen. But you're right. There's no guarantee. Like I remember 2008, like Jimmy Johnson just had to survive the Cup finale because even in those 10 races, he built up enough of a gap over Carl Edwards. Whereas you go to the Truck Series, they still had the full season at the time, and
Yeah.
Ron Hornaday and Johnny Benson were basically. I think Benson had a 3 point gap, and so one just had to finish in front of the other, and Benson still wins that title, but it's dramatic and it goes down to the final race. So you can, and I think that championship is viewed more fondly in hindsight because you don't get that every year. It did play out very close between two very evenly matched drivers, and
Hmm.
you got your throwing championship battle there, and your 10 race chase the same year didn't even guarantee that to the same degree. But anyway, you're right. I think because a large part of my frustrations from Sunday and even I think Friday night to be fair, even though it did end up working out in Corey Haim's favor anyway. We've had this discussion before. I think the first time you came on my encore show was after they red flagged the Indy 500 in 2023, and I will again tell you, at the bare minimum, they didn't turn the Indianapolis 500 into the Indianapolis 505. Like that was still a 500-mile race. I don't love the fact that we threw three red flags. One red flag was absolutely necessary. The second I thought was starting to push it a little bit. The third, I just kind of lost my mind because I said there's no reason that a wreck like this should warrant a red flag in this moment. Why do you fall on the? Because I listened to the conversation that you had with Matt White a couple of weeks ago, and Matt has been a little more pro playoff, I think, than most of the rest of his Grid Network colleagues, myself included. But he seemed to be on the other end of the overtime debate with you, at least what I gathered from the conversation that you two had. Is it really just the fans paid their hard-earned money, they deserve a green flag finisher? Or is there something else that makes you say, I like this. We should try to finish under green no matter what it takes?
Yeah, I don't want to sit through the hours long race and then just be let down. That it truly is how simple it gets. And I know that is extremely self-serving. It is. But, so much goes into these races, and if you're a person that devotes all of your time on Sunday to whatever that turns out to be, 3.5, 4 hours, whatever, I, just me personally, I want to see it end under finish, under green. I want to get a payoff for all of this that we've built to. Now, I will also say again, I've been a fan of this sport for my entire life, and from the early years of me being on Earth, we finished races under caution, and that's fine. Everybody loves to bring up Dale Earnhardt in the '98 Daytona 500. Part of that too is, I believe, we still got a race to a flag. Because the field was not frozen, we still ran half a lap, and everybody knew. Now, granted, they only had about 30 seconds or so to process. Okay, we need to get to the line first here, but at least we all knew that there was a race to a line and a race to a flag to finish the race. We don't do that anymore. Thank God. One of the smartest things we did outside of t- two best things we ever did in this sport was put a pit road speed limit and stop racing back to the yellow. So I'm glad we don't race back to the yellow. I am not in any way saying we need to do that again. But because we don't, now you want to talk about randomness. Now, randomness is when we've got, especially at a super speedway, all of these cars battling for the win, and all of these cars are so close together, and we get on the last lap, and by the flicker of that yellow light, the race is over, and then we have to go to the Zapruder films like we did in the Xfinity race at Talladega this year to see who's in front. That just takes the air out of the whole building, out of the whole process. I just want to see a green flag finish. Now, yes, I am also of the belief that 5 overtimes at Nashville is ridiculous. And the truck racing Gateway, was it 2003? We went really crazy
I
on
think it was
that.
'04. I think that was right before they were bringing it to the Cup
Yeah.
Series. Yeah.
I mean, that eventually you do get to the point of, okay, enough. Can we not finish 2 laps? But that's not overtime's fault. That's the driver's fault. Can't finish two
I'm
laps.
with you on that. Yeah.
But we also don't get that all the time, right? I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I don't recall going more than one overtime all that often this year. We certainly did at Indianapolis, but I can't remember many other times where we went beyond one overtime this year. Now, we can talk about if unlimited attempts is too much. Maybe it is. I mean, we used to have one attempt, then we went to overtime line. No, then we went to 3 attempts, then we went to overtime line, which was really dumb. And now we're at where we're at, where it's basically still overtime line, but the overtime line is the finish line. And we have unlimited attempts to get to that point. But yeah, it's extremely self-serving that I want the race to finish under green because I've devoted so much time.
Well,
You probably heard in that conversation with Matt, I watched every single lap of the Cup Series season this year. When I'm watching every single lap, I would like to get to the finish under green. That's my perspective of it all. Um, I also said, you want to go to one lap? It's cool with me because I, again, the argument that I made when I said that was, well, that means just 15 seconds at Bristol. And should we clean everything up for 15 seconds at Bristol? Sure. Okay, well, the person running sixth doesn't have a chance. Well, he didn't before the caution, or at Talladega or Daytona. That's not enough time to get a draft built. Figure it out. If we want to do one lap, I'd be cool with that. ARCA rule. If we want to keep it as it is, I'm fine with that. I don't want races to finish under caution. It's just a letdown. It really, really is. As far as the Indy 500 goes, by the way, we need a rule. Can we at least get a written rule of when we want to do red flags? Like, I would like that, but that's another conversation.
well, and again, this is one where I'm willing to maybe compromise a little bit. Because again, I would prefer. I mean, first of all, I think you're right. Part of it is the drivers. I mean, the so-called best drivers in the world can't run 2 laps under green. I mean, what are we doing here, right? But seeing these what did Ricky Stenhouse win with Daytona 530? I mean, come on, like multiple overtime attempts there. But I think my proposal would be crown jewels where the number is not arbitrary. Like it's not the Daytona 510, it's not the Brickyard 405, it's not the Coca-Cola 605 or the World 605, as maybe Dale Jr. would still call it, and get the sponsorship name out of there, or the Southern 500, right? But those four races, I would say I don't want to see it at all. Um, but I would be maybe will, and again, this goes back to the proposal that Toby Christie made that I think maybe has some merit to it. If the leader has less than a second advantage, and the race is therefore arguably still in question, then maybe we do one attempt to try to settle it under green. But if SVG's got a 25-second lead in Mexico or at Sonoma or a road course like that, and the guy running 25th goes into the tire barriers and can't get restarted, and NASCAR has no choice but to, well, like what happened with Parker Kligerman, for example. He didn't have that big of a lead, but I mean the man was inches away from crossing the line and had the race won, and yet we can't finish under yellow, so we got to re-rack him, and 2 laps on a road course is a lifetime compared to a place like Bristol, right? So, and he
Hmm.
ends up fading from there, and that's his last best chance to win as a full-time driver with Big Machine Racing. And again, everybody, and then Sam Mayer, I feel like gets hated on for it, as if he had anything to do with the decisions that were made there. So I feel like again, that would be. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. Do you think that it's mostly just if we have a battle, and we would have that on super speedways, right? You're not going to see a second lead probably at Talladega I mean, I guess if we're doing this crown jewel thing, then the 500 is a different story. But would you be willing to accept that maybe? Like if the race is in question, sure we can do an overtime. But if the race has already all but been won, again, going back to the randomness theme of it, we're going to re-rack him for a 2 lap restart when the guy had a 4 second lead just a couple laps earlier. I don't know, but I love that. What are your thoughts on that proposal?
I I think that's interesting. I could also see where that turns into okay, let's go back to the cameras here because he may have had a 0.989 second of a lead, and I could see that
That's
turning
fair.
into a
That
mess.
is fair.
Um, I mean, I'm willing to I'm willing to make as many changes as we need to if they're necessary. If we want overtime to just be a single file restart to cut down on chaos, then okay. I suppose we could do that, but now you're changing for overtime what you do for the entire rest of the race. Um, I would also say I'm really starting to talk myself into one lap. And I'll say what I a big reason why, now that I'm talking it out more out loud, is what I just said about the Daytona 500 in 1998 is at least we race to a flag. Generally speaking, not in 100% of the cases, but generally speaking, if we went to just one lap in overtime, then you could have a crash in turn two somewhere and you wouldn't have to throw the caution. Hopefully. You could let them race back around to race to the flag, and then that cuts out double overtime and triple and whatever else. So I'm starting to talk myself into doing one lap, but that's not what you asked. You asked about the margin. I don't know. I just could see that getting really messy really quick if you were to put a margin on it to when it could go to overtime. And then that's not even considering what the intervals are between the guy that's trying to get up to, 10th, because, top 10 is nice.
Yeah, well, I think that proposal was made in mind with the winner in mind, obviously, and
Hmm.
obviously that being where the most prestige is. But you're right. There may be a close battle elsewhere on track that gets interrupted and can't play out there. But I think obviously fans they notice it the most when it's somebody that's got a big lead or somebody that seems to have
Hmm.
uh, the race in their control, much like, again, going back to the championship in Phoenix, Denny Hamlin was going to win that race unless he was the one that blew out a tire, I guess, and then who knows what would have happened between the Hendrick cars after that. But um, again, I think it goes back to, for me at least, the idea of feeling too much like a lottery in that sense. And when I say like a lottery rather than just a lottery straight up, because yes, you can go out there and you can nail the restart and go win the race anyway. It's not like the chance has been taken from you, but it's almost like he has to win it again, right? And I think that goes back to the playoffs as well. Like how many times does your champion need to be crowned, right? Like Connor Zilisch and Corey Heim, two extreme examples of that this year. But um, they win all these races and they get in and then they advance to the next round, and it's so clear and obvious that they are the quote unquote rightful champions. They're the ones that have been the most dominant drivers this season. Maybe that happens during a race. Somebody leads all but 20 laps of a 300 lap race or a 400 lap race, and it's clear and obvious that they deserve to be the race winner that day. And then the guy running 15th blows a tire or blows an engine, or the guy running, 30-second, 3 laps down is getting out for payback on somebody else and completely. I mean, talk about Corey Heim, right? Corey Heim and Carson Hocevar are kind of what sparked that whole Phoenix
Hmm.
debacle 2 years ago on trucks. And all that just it again leads to more opportunities for that chaos to play out. I guess Ryan
Yeah.
Blaney at the All-Star race a few years ago. That's an example of that there, and that was one where, like you were saying, that was on the last lap. That had to finish on the green no matter what. Um, and he took his window net down because he was so close. He thought he had won the race, and
Yeah.
he literally did have to go win that race twice. That again, when it is that when the can of worms is opened up that much to the point where that level of absurdity is possible, I do feel like that's playing I mean, in Blaney's case especially, playing a dangerous game, um, and just bordering on ridiculousn's.
Heck, ask Ryan Blaney this year at Darlington. He had that race won. He had passed Tyler
Yeah.
Reddick for the lead with like what 2 or 3 laps to go, and Kyle Larson spins out literally right behind him to put the race in overtime. And guess who won that race? Denny Hamlin. Den-
Yeah.
Denny got some, and that was also a race where neither one of those guys dominated. William Byron led like 80% of the laps that day,
Yeah.
and he wasn't going to win it in regulation, and he
But you
didn't win it in overtime.
you know what comes to mind for me, honestly, is not this past year, Austin Dillon at Richmond, but 24, when Austin Dillon had the Richmond race wrapped up, and everybody was saying, look at this guy that's 30 something in points, going to completely shock and upset the playoff field, and then again, right in front of him, to your point, right, where they are on the track, it happens right in front of him. Um, I don't even remember who it was. I know Stenhouse was one of them, but a couple of cars go up
Stenhouse
into the
and
wall. Yeah,
Priest.
and that just he's gonna win the race. He's gonna get into the playoffs or whatever that means. But we re-rack them all. Joey Logano beats him on the restart, and then he has to go and move Joey Logano out of the way, and then right rear hook Denny Hamlin coming off the corner because Hamlin's gotten by him after he drove in too deep into the corner, and he wins the race. And he did what he had to do, I guess, even though NASCAR decided we're not letting you get away with that. They take his playoff spot away, but he was going to win the race anyway. Like we went through
Yeah.
all of that. We now have all this controversy and all this, you know, discussion over where do we draw the line and what are the ethics of the sport. And none of that would have been necessary if we had just let Austin Dillon win the race that he won anyway. It just kind of
Yeah,
leaves me with a sour taste in my mouth.
I get it. There's also a segment of people in this sport that really just like chaos. Like they're like at its
True too.
core,
Yep.
there's so many people that love this sport because they love the chaos of it. And this can be talked about in overtime. This can be talked about the championship format that we have. Prior to 2004, if someone opened up a huge lead at the end of a season and we had 3, 4, or 5 races left in the season, we're kind of all just huddled around our TV. Okay, is Bobby Labonte going to screw up today? He's got a 244-point lead. Is he going to screw up today? And then we wait for 4 hours waiting to see if he has a flat tire or if they loose wheel or whatever. Something happens to the point leader. Something happens to Matt Kenseth in 2003 or Jeff Gordon in 98 or whatever. Okay, we're not here to see anything else, just to see if the point leader has something happen to him. Same thing in this overtime conversation of at Mexico, Shane Van Gisbergen is away by a mile and a half. Okay, let's all huddle around and see if a caution's going to come out to change this and the complexion of this, or if we're just going to wait for Shane to win by 20 seconds, if we're just going to wait for Matt Kenseth to clinch the championship a race early. There's people on your end that just want it to be as legitimate as it can be, and if that means it's boring, then too bad. But there's also a segment of people that just they want to see all the flames burn to the ground and let chaos reign.
Yeah. Well, and again, I don't want to give the impression that, I would love to have a four wide finish for the win every week, but I understand that that's not realistic, and I think that because it doesn't happen every week, it makes, well, like what we got at Atlanta in 24, I guess, right? With Suarez, Bush, and
Hmm.
Blaney going three, Blaney and Bush, I should say, going three wide and finishing one, two, three, and Kyle Busch he loses the race by 7 thousandths of a second and he finishes third, right? Because it's that close of like, yeah, that was like, and I'm not even a huge fan of the new Atlanta, but I can still look back and say like, okay, yeah, that was that right there is pretty cool and pretty special. But I can look at the 1992 Hooters 500 and in a lot of people's minds, like you said, one of the greatest races ever, not just because of the championship, but because it was also Jeff Gordon's first race and Richard Petty's last, and you had three favorites from a championship and three long shots all coming together, and that doesn't always happen. Like what we got in Formula One this year, three drivers going to Abu Dhabi with a shot of a championship. It doesn't always happen, but because it doesn't always happen, it makes years like that feel a little bit more special. When you you do rig this. Rig's probably not the best word. I'm not saying it's predetermined or anything, but you manufacture the system, you create a system that guarantees
Hmm.
a four-way battle, level on points every year, then even if you do get a last lap pass or last lap change for the championship, it doesn't feel as special as it would if you say these guys raced their hearts out all year, and after all this time, it comes down to the final race, and one pass could be the difference between these two. Now that's the case every year, and it just doesn't. I think that's why for a lot of people, it doesn't hit them the same way that 92 does.
Yeah. But I also ask the question, why is our fan base the way that we are? Like, not every Super Bowl is a classic. The last one was 40-6 in the fourth quarter, and you don't mind me bringing that up. It was 40-6. The final was like 40-22 or whatever. It was 40-6. We watched the 49ers win one year like 55-10 in New Orleans over Denver. Saw Denver lose 43-8 to Seattle in New York. Like NBA finals end in sweeps. You also get World Series that goes 7 games in extra innings like we did this year. But like it's just you get a you get a 43-8 Super Bowl and people are like, "Oh, well that's a shame." It's like, let's not burn the system to the ground and let 27 teams in the playoffs and change everything. But in this sport, it's like we have to psychoanalyze everything that happens, and I just don't know why we do that. Like, why? That's what I don't get is why we can never seem to be completely happy in this sport. Whether we weren't happy because before 2003, people were winning championships with two or three races left, all the way to the new extreme of what we had this year at Phoenix. Like we just don't seem to be happy no matter what we get around here. And I think that's just really that can be really frustrating. It certainly can to me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And again, I know I try to avoid the stick and ball sport comparisons, but you're right. Not every championship match or championship game or championship series in other sports is an all-time classic. But I think that only selfishly, I think that only strengthens my side of the playoff argument. We don't get
Hmm.
that every year, but you know. like you said, there aren't fans in other sports that are begging for the system to be burnt to the ground there. So, it
Like
does.
this year's Game 7 of the World Series, in 20 years, we're going to look at that and like,
Oh, no question.
we're going to look at
Yeah.
that game, or we're going to look at Game 7 between Cleveland and Chicago in 16 and think those are two of the greatest games we've ever seen. And that's fine. That's great. It's more than fine. It's great. But like I said, at the same time, it didn't matter to me who won that championship this year in baseball. So at the end of the day, why do I really care how great it was? Because the Reds weren't in it. The Reds are never in it. But I don't know. We really try hard to be angry sometimes in this sport. So many people on both sides of the argument, and it really does get frustrating that we just can't seem to enjoy what we've got. But that's part of that social media too, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. I think it has brought the worst out in us in many respects. It's very easy to just say whatever intrusive thought comes to your mind and send it out to uh, the entire world, frankly. I mean, an unlimited reach. You could get a retweet from, you know, the Dale Juniors or Jeff Gordons or whoever of the world, and or Jimmy Johnson, whoever's got the most millions of followers, and how far more people see it than you were expecting to, I suppose. But yeah, we can leave the conversation there. I do want to just put on the record, since you brought the Kansas City Chiefs up, I cannot lie. I am happy that it is December 15th and they are already out of postseason contention. I Even I am not going to be cruel enough to wish a torn ACL on Patrick Mahomes. So I do wish that he has a successful recovery there and is not hurt too badly for the rest of his career there. But I can't lie. Eagles win, Cowboys lose, Chiefs eliminated. Doesn't get much better than that. We'll see. I still would not doubt that Marcus Mariota goes on the greatest revenge tour of Chip Kelly of all time and keeps the Eagles from winning any of these two games against the Commanders, and somehow Dallas finds a way to win out, and we still, even though we have a greater than 99% chance of clinching the division at this point, find a way to choke, and it's an all-time embarrassing collapse, even more than 23 was. But uh, yes, it was not. I can't lie. It was a pretty wonderful day yesterday in the NFL for me. I must admit that.
Washington is slightly better than Las Vegas, who had 75 yards in a game that took less time than some of the NCAA volleyball tournament matches took
Man,
yesterday.
I got the notification at like 3:40 from the Athletic. I thought somebody had jumped the gun. I couldn't believe it that the game was actually over. But um, yeah. Anyway, enough of that. Maybe I'm sure I'll get you back on here one day, and we can. I still want to ask you about Tony Romo and everything, and how you think Tom Brady's doing in the booth. But we've already been going at this for an hour
Yes.
45 or so here. You did tell me tonight you did want to touch on one more thing real quick, and I'll give you the chance to do that. In part of the conversation about the changing landscape and the world of sports media, which I know you have, I think, in your words on this show before, followed to an unhealthy degree. But I know you care about this a lot, very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about motorsports, and Formula One is moving to Apple TV here in the United States next year. So again, I'll give you the floor for just a few minutes here as we wrap up the show. What are your thoughts on what that deal might look like next year? And is what we've seen in MLS perhaps a preview of that? They're taking the MLS season pass away. It's just going to be on Apple TV for all subscribers next year. Are there lessons that F1 can learn from MLS as they get ready for this deal? What are your thoughts on where Formula One is going to be next season?
They have to learn from the disaster that the MLS has been, and to some point the disaster that Major League Baseball has been on Apple TV, not behind an extra subscription, but no one has watched the baseball on Apple. Um, the MLS ratings on Apple have not been good. I'm just this is this is a very puzzling decision outside of just they paid the most money. And we know sports leagues and entities, when they go to these TV contracts, they just want what pays the most money. But it's not always what's best for the viewers and the fans. We've seen that with NASCAR this past year, the first year of the new media rights. It paid a ton of money to NASCAR, but it wasn't great for the viewers to be on Fox, to be on FS1, to be on Amazon, to be on TNT, USA, and NBC, and all of what I think it turned out to be six, seven races on over-the-air television. Ratings dipped pretty hard to I think where they were down 14%, if I'm not mistaken, from last year, which NASCAR Ben Kennedy said that was the expected number, was somewhere between 13 and 15%, and they fell right into it. But they got their money, and that's all that matters to them, I suppose. Well, Formula One has gotten a lot of money from Apple to be the new rights holder in the United States, but at what cost? Because the Formula One has obviously had this enormous boom over about the last 5 years or so in this country. ESPN just had another great year. Championship fight, I'd have to believe, played into that a large amount. But they had a really great year with ratings of Formula One on ESPN, and now it goes to Apple. I have not heard what Apple is planning on doing. My anticipation is it's going to be much like ESPN, where it's just a copy and paste of either the Sky Sports broadcast or the F1 TV broadcast. That's my anticipation. I can't imagine that Apple's going to go out and hire their own booth like Speed did with Bob Varsha, Steve Matchett, and David Hobbs and put on their own production. Maybe they do it. I would actually love if they did that, but I kind of doubt it. So you've got European and Asian and Middle Eastern Grand Prix that are going to start at a really not so great time here in the United States, no matter where you're at, Eastern Time, Pacific Time, or anywhere in between. Apple TV is not the most popular streaming service. Um, I just wonder what's going to happen to these ratings and what's going to happen to the popularity of Formula One in this country that has had the biggest boom that it has ever had in this country. What is going to happen to it now with it going to Apple? Um, if this was Netflix, would we have this much consternation over it? No. Netflix, seemingly everybody has Netflix, and Netflix, of course, is the place of Drive to Survive. But because it goes to Apple, and because Apple has had the issues that I mentioned with Major League Baseball and Major League Soccer, I think you really raise your eyebrows at this, and this this could really go wrong. I know we have three races here in this country. We have Cadillac coming in. We don't have Colton Herta in F1. That's, of course, could be happening soon. We have a lot of things going for Formula One in America right now. I do wonder if this is a huge, huge speed bump or perhaps even a full-on stop sign.
Yeah, well, to your point about Drive to Survive and Netflix, I will say I think if you play that game, you have to acknowledge at least that the F1 movie was developed and produced in
Hmm.
large part with Apple TV, and that's where the movie's streaming now. I mean, if you're like me, you've got the Steelbook 4K disc already, so you don't have to worry about that. You've been able to watch it whenever you want for the last couple of months that that's been out. But if you are looking to stream it, it is now available on Apple TV, and they've put a lot. I mean, I don't doubt that they, care about putting on a good product. And I will say, as somebody that's watched a lot of Union games over the last few years, I've liked Apple's coverage. I just think not a lot of people have watched it because it's been, again, in that case, a paywall behind a paywall,
Right.
um, which at least that is ending this year. But again, to your point about having a lot going for you, the greatest soccer player ever in the minds of, I think, more people than ever after he won the World Cup a few years
Hmm.
ago. Lionel Messi is in our league with Inter Miami. They have won a Leagues Cup, they've won a Supporters Shield, they've now won MLS Cup, and I feel like it has barely moved the needle in terms of
Hmm.
the popularity because that's always been the question, right? There's plenty of soccer fans in this country, there's plenty of Premier League fans, plenty of Champions League fans. How do we turn those fans into Major League Soccer fans? And I don't think putting that, the coverage can be as great as, you maybe couldn't ask much more of an out of a broadcast. Coverage can be as good as you want. Doesn't matter much if not very many people are tuning in or going out of their way to pay a subscription fee to access that coverage. So, again, I think that if it had to be a streaming service, I would also prefer it to be Netflix or Prime. maybe. I think Amazon Prime is the other one that
Hmm.
they could probably get away with. And we saw NASCAR and test the waters with that this year. I thought they did a good job. I thought, I think what the NFL has obviously with Thursday Night Football, I think that's been reasonably a reasonably good deal for them.
Yes.
But maybe after those two, Apple would be the third best option. Like at least Formula One is not on Peacock, right? Or Paramount Plus or a service like that. But I don't think, and I brought this point up on Grid as well. It's very easy to walk into a bar and say, "Hey, can you flip to ESPN? We want to watch the F1 race." How many bars are going to listen to a customer say like, "Hey, you guys log into your Apple TV account and click a few buttons over here and log in to access that like I think that's a major part of it too. I think being on ESPN, not I think the Speed and NBC eras were great in their own right, but I think being on ESPN is a major advantage over being on NBCSN, for example.
Hmm.
Like they were, or some weekends they get bumped to CNBC even. As great as I thought the NBC coverage was, and I know ESPN isn't even really covering the sport in that sense. Like, yeah, Nicole
Right.
Briscoe's there for the American races and provides a lead in and lead out to the coverage, but for the most part, it is just the Sky Sports feed simulcast over here in the States, and I don't know if Apple's gonna keep up with that or not, or if it's gonna be, the F1 TV deal looks like it's changing at least for us here in the United States. So there's a lot of questions that still have to be answered. We'll get our answers soon enough, but I share your concerns that this could, at the very least, I have a hard time seeing the exponential boom and exponential growth continuing at the level that it has with this new deal. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong, but it does give me great cause for concern being behind a paywall.
Yeah, and again, if you're on ESPN, you're on cable, but you're also on their ESPN streaming service. I thought at this point that's the perfect deal for them to continue to maximize viewership in the US. So I know it's just because Apple paid more money, but that's not always the right way to pick TV deals. And I think that's going to be proven correct here because my fear is that the ratings are going to really plummet, especially for an Australian Grand Prix, a Japanese Grand Prix. Um, I would be really afraid that those, and will Apple even release the ratings? I mean,
Yeah, it's a fair
we've
question.
had that conversation with Apple, we've had it with Peacock, and so on. So who knows? And I guess our own perceptions are our own realities. Part of this for me is I don't have Apple. It's about the only streaming service left that I have not felt the need to buy. I have had it in the past to watch Ted Lasso, but I do not currently have it now. Um, so I've got to make a decision on if I want it or not. Um, before next season starts. And I mean, it'd be really difficult to look at yourself as a Formula One fan and not have it after we just had a season like this where Max did what he did and a car that was not even close to the McLarens, but yet will his way into the championship battle. The drama at McLaren, add all to that in that we're changing regulations. It'd be really hard to not get it if you're a Formula One fan next year, but we don't all have the money that Formula One has to just choose whatever. I mean, uh, God, let me get on my phone. I have Paramount Plus for NFL, college football, college basketball, and Champions League. I
Champions
have
League, yep.
Peacock for the NBA and for what will soon be Major League Baseball next year, and for the NFL. I have Hulu and ESPN, that bundle for everything on the ESPN. I'm on Prime for NASCAR and Thursday Night Football and the NBA. I have Netflix because everybody wants Netflix to watch their TV shows. Women's World Cup will be going to Netflix here soon. Um, I have HBO Max for the NHL games and anything that's on TNT, NASCAR. Enough already. Could, maybe we should just bundle all the streaming services and put it together as one big package and call it something crazy like cable. I don't know.
Cable
But
Plus. Yes.
But another decision to make with streaming, unfortunately, for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be very interesting at the very least. I'm sure there'll be no shortage of things to talk about next year. But again, and selfishly, as somebody that already has it, doesn't have to worry about it. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the coverage. But from the perspective of what's best for the entire U.S. fan base and U.S. audience, I am worried that we're going to look back on this as a mistake. Um,
Yeah,
but I hope I'm wrong when I say that, but we'll have to wait and see. So,
yeah, we'll see.
all right. Well, Matthew Owens, my man, thank you so much for joining me over these last couple of hours here. Before I let you go, just real quick, don't want this to turn into a full-on talking point, but in 30 seconds or less, Rick Allen to the PBA, your thoughts?
Wow. I did not see that one coming. He's getting a lot of bigger assignments with the CW. I did not see that coming. Um, and there's problems in lane two. The momentum, the contact with the 8 pin. I don't know. I'll tune in, see how it goes. I'll report back.
Yeah, I wish he'd come a few years earlier because you can imagine him calling Pete Weber in 2012. That would imagine
Uh,
him on the call for that. That would have been interesting. But
uh,
yeah, we'll wait and
Gary
see. Like,
Thorne did well with that though.
yeah, yeah, there you go. All right, man. Appreciate it. You know where to find me if you ever want to continue the conversation. I'm sure we will at some point. But thank you
Oh,
for coming on here and explaining your tweet.
2 hours, and we have so much more we could still talk about anytime.
All right, my man. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll talk to you soon.